My name is Eleanor Powells. I'm a senior fellow with the Global Center on Cooperative Security. My research focuses on the governance, peace and security implications produced by the convergence of artificial intelligence with other dual-use technologies, including cybersecurity, genomics, and genome editing. In my new policy brief, I discuss the use of AI and data capture technologies by multilateral actors like the United Nations and their member states, and how this can be positively harnessed and misused in the field of humanitarian action, conflict prevention, and counterterrorism. We have entered a new tech era where our daily lives, composed of digital, geospatial, biometrics, and biological data, have become free material for behavioral surveillance. This emerging capacity is born out of the convergence between AI, biometrics, and other data capture technologies. This combination of technologies could drastically impact how we conceive approaches to violence and conflict prevention, but this shift comes with significant ethical, governance, and human rights implications. For instance, combined with facial recognition, autonomous AI systems can remotely analyze human actions and crowd behaviors. Large datasets captured through satellites and drones equipped with video surveillance can reveal the location, settlements, and movements of ethnic subgroups, minority groups, and refugees. Similar techniques are also being applied to monitor the proliferation of hate speech on social media and have been used to anticipate election violence. The pervasive analysis of populations' behaviors and intentions, as well as their routine activities, can serve several goals. First, to predict violence drivers and patterns. Second, to predict early warning signals of impending crisis. And finally, to identify non-state violent actors by analyzing the unique features of their activities. In a nutshell, the hope is that such form of intelligence could help us understand and predict hate speech, armed violence, as well as support prevention with cyber and media forensics. And so one obvious temptation for the multilateral system and its member states is to use these technologies for intelligence collection in different aspects of the prevention agenda, for monitoring behavioral patterns in epidemics, hate speech, terrorism, ethnic conflicts, and violent outbreaks. However, these technologies can also be misused, and the policy brief addresses some key implications that violence and conflict prevention actors will have to consider in their work. The use of automated and predictive behavioral analysis can be misused by state, corporate, and non-state violent actors, and is likely to pose new complex challenges for protecting human rights in fragile contexts. Although these technologies may present long-term gains, there are also important ethical risks with an AI-driven strategy for violence and conflict prevention to consider. First, there are significant risks they pose to civilian security. Sensitive data about people's locations, livelihoods, behavior, and intentions are subject to digital or biological surveillance. Equipped with crowd analysis, data capture technologies help authorities and non-state violent actors alike anticipate populations' movements during protests, elections, ceasefires, religious or social events, or to plan attacks. Second, there is a tendency to underestimate how AI, biometrics, and other surveillance technologies can be designed to anticipate and influence human behaviors for social and political control. Implications to human rights include limits to self-determination and political agency, the right to peaceful assembly and protest, and privacy and data protection, as well as discrimination, exposure to pervasive data security breaches, and new forms of censorship in the virtual civic space. We are therefore facing a major challenge when it comes to defining the opportunities, but also the limits and risks of gathering behavioral intelligence about vulnerable populations through the use of AI technologies designed by private sector actors in complex, weakly regulated supply chains. Policy leaders, civil society organizations, the private sector, and the multilateral system need to be able to mitigate the potential harmful impacts of such an evolution if they want to avoid the most salient accountability crisis to date. There is an urgent need to devise what I call a theory of no harm in the AI and conflict prevention space. Such a theory would consist of developing adequate methods to harness the benefits of these emerging technologies while ensuring security and the protection of human rights. The field of violence and conflict prevention increasingly relies on AI and tech convergence to collect large amounts of behavioral and context information about populations living in countries affected by fragility risks or violent outbreaks. Violence and conflict prevention actors need to ensure that the trove of information gathered through data capture and other methods anticipate risks, is collected and stored according to regulation, and does not spread to third parties. A major accountability gap exists when there are no methods and cross-sector collaborations to anticipate unforeseen misuses and long-term impacts of new technologies on vulnerable populations. We need normative, multi-stakeholder leadership under the form of, first, policy co-creation to design operational policy safeguards on the ethical use of AI. Second, effective mechanisms to secure populations' datasets and to observe purpose limitation during the full data life cycle. Third, foresight scenarios, phase gate processes, and in-depth human rights impact assessments that allow policymakers, corporate, and prevention actors to prevent data and tech misuses. And finally, mechanisms for accountability and remedy.